Welcome, everyone, to the Walking with Jaguars podcast. I am your host, Matt Blanco, and today is a very special episode. It's episode one, and we are talking to probably my favorite person in this world, Emily. She is a permaculturalist, she is a women's circle facilitator, she's a mineralization and holistic health specialist. She's a ayahuasca dietero, medicine woman, and my fiance, soon to be wife. So thank you for joining me. You have so much medicine and you've taught me so much, and I see the way that you impact everyone around you too. Like, even just as an example, at the start of this year, my sister came and lived with us for 2 months, and the way that you impacted her life honestly was profound. So, welcome. If there was anything I missed, feel free to jump in. How would you describe Emily?
Ooh, big first question, but I think you did a pretty good job. I mean, you got all of my titles, and I kind of like hearing them spoken back to myself because I forget how many titles I have under my belt. Um, but yeah, happy to be here. Where else would I be? Happy to support you on your mission and getting your voice out to the world. And yeah, I'm excited to dive in with you and share some of our medicine to the world. But I feel like if I were to just sum myself up, I mean, we'll try. But my medicine really comes back to, the wisdom of the earth, the wisdom of our Pachamama, the wisdom in our body, really grounding medicine. Everything I do from permaculture to remineralization to cycle awareness, it's all coming back to the wisdom of Pachamama, you know, dieting. It's like learning from the plants. And so I really just try and be a conduit and a voice for that wisdom and let it move through me in everything that I do, you know, the mother, the feminine, the protector, the provider.
Oh,
Mm.
wow. Nice. Okay, so we have lots to talk about for sure. And I think in this podcast, we'll just take out a little slice of your medicine. And I really want to dive into like spiritual initiation, ceremony, and how those things have led you to understanding the feminine body in new ways. But before we get into the nitty gritty, do you want to just lay out a bit of a path that, like, of your path that you've walked over the last 5 or 6 years? Like, we've done almost all of it together in some fashion, but obviously very different individuals on individual journeys. Although we're
Mm-hmm.
rolling side by side. So, if you just want to share some of the big initiations along the way, that'd be
Mm-hmm.
great.
Yeah. Big initiations, but not too much detail.
Just give me a nice overview. You
Yeah.
know.
I mean, I feel like the catalyst was really leaping into the unknown of being a solo backpacker in South America for 8 months. Like, that really catapulted my journey into another layer. And at the end of it, I met you, and just that calling to go to South America, to go to a country that I've never been to, I didn't really know anything about, didn't have any plan, didn't have anyone to go with. Didn't really have a lot of money, but a really strong calling and a lot of trust. And so just learning how to trust myself, learning how to wake up every day and just ask the question of, Emily, what do you want to do today? Who do you want to be today? You have no one to prove. You have no one to please. You have nothing to prove. You what do you want? What is your soul desire? So much of the time, especially as the feminine, we're really, really aware of everyone else's needs around us. We're really attuned. We want to be in service. We want to make sure everyone else around us is happy and comfortable and satisfied. to just wake up every day and just make sure that you're taken care of was really impactful. And that, my safety was taken care of, my need for adventure was taken care of, my relationships were taken care of, all of those kinds of things. And it was such a big learning experience for me to be out by myself for 8 months doing that.
Yeah. I even mentioned that like in the little like episode 0 story that I said.
Hmm.
And just like when you take that leap into solo backpacking, like never in your life have you had basically total free will, you
Uh-huh.
know? Like you have choices here and there, but it's
Hmm.
always like, oh, but like parents this and then oh friends this and oh career this
Hmm.
and you know. But like when you're solo backpacking, it's literally just like every day is yours for the taking.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like people get little glimpses of that when they're on vacation. But there's also like when you go on a 2 week vacation, it's like you're trying to cram everything into one. And when you're backpacking, you can't do that. So you really have to find a rhythm with it. Right. And you have to find a pace that you move at, the pace of life that suits you and, your desires and your needs and your fulfillments. And it's really, I mean, it's confronting and liberating and really illuminating.
I mean, one of the things that I just thought was like mystical about you when I first met you was that you just like conquered South America by yourself.
Yeah, and I think that it was obviously divinely orchestrated in this way, but I wasn't planning on going by myself. I hadn't planned the trip to be by myself. I had planned to go with my cousin, and we had agreed to do 4 months, 4 countries, and I had 4 grand in my bank account. And I was like, perfect. A month in each country, $1,000 each month, the two of us. And there was 2 countries that she wanted to go to and 2 countries that I wanted to go to. And so this is how we laid it out. And then the week before, she just texted me, hey, I can't come. I'm sorry. And I had already quit my job and I had already bought my ticket, and there was nothing that was going to stop me. Although when I told my dad that I was going alone, he was like, I'll pay for your flight to go to Europe instead. Like there was there was all this fear around being a 22-year-old young good-looking woman in South America. There was a lot of fear. And I almost stopped myself, but the calling again was just so strong that I had to see it through. And honestly, like her bailing, I was pretty angry, to be honest, when she she bailed on me last minute. But in hindsight, it's the greatest thing that she's ever done for me, and probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because that impact of traveling by yourself, I mean, you know what it's like. I mean, you traveled with a friend and then you guys split up, and the impact of traveling alone versus traveling with somebody is completely different. It's a totally different territory, right?
For sure. For sure.
Uh-uh.
And arguably way better. Depends on the friend, but just, you know,
But I mean,
I love free will, you know?
in terms of just like self inquiry and exploration, I feel like traveling alone really takes it to the next level. And it's a recommendation that I would give to any woman in her 20s, is to, travel alone at some point in her 20s.
To
Whether
see what
it's
you're capable of.
just, yeah, I mean, I feel like so many people are waiting for other people to travel, right? Because they don't feel secure enough in themselves to go and do this, or they don't feel like it'll be enough fun, or it'll be, there's all these reasons why we restrict ourselves. And it's honestly one of the greatest things you can ever experience. I'm so happy that we've already got that under our belts.
Oh, yeah. Plenty. I wouldn't be who I am today without it. And I know you wouldn't be who you are today. And I definitely wouldn't know you,
Well,
you know?
exactly. I feel like at the end of my 8 months traveling alone, the universe was like, and here's your life partner. Here's your gift for doing something courageous and something for yourself. And yeah, just, I think that
Yeah.
the universe gifts that kind of behavior.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got you as my gift, but mine was just 3 days in. So, you know, I thought I was going to be a single man out on the prowl for a year, but actually the universe was like, no, you actually need to like rein it in a little bit and like fall in love with someone who's like amazing. Because I probably would have got up to no good, you know? So,
Yeah, this is true.
yeah. Okay. So,
Mm.
moving on from South America,
Hmm.
what was the
That was
next big one?
initiation number one. Next initiation feels like ayahuasca.
Oh,
I mean, we did have 6 months at Chuckleberry. I don't know if you want to go into that, but that doesn't feel, that was a lot of self inquiry and a lot of work that we did on our relationship, but it didn't feel like a kind of big bang moment, if you know what I mean.
it was kind of like a stepping stone.
It was a stepping, and it was an important stepping stone.
Mhm.
And I think that it will, the communication skills that we learned and the couples therapy that we went to at the very beginning of our relationship, like really created a solid foundation for us to be able to thrive. But it didn't quite feel like an initiation. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, great tools. And like this is the thing is like we did couples therapy like really early on in our relationship, and it wasn't that like anything was wrong. We were just
Mm,
living with this man John Scott who was incredible and offered it as a service, and it laid an amazing foundation for us. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend people go out and do couples therapy because like I don't know what other people are like. Like John Scott is a special person,
mm-hmm.
you know. But there's just like so many things in relation that you need to learn how to navigate. And such a big piece of it is like we all walk around with so many triggers and so much trauma, especially around the opposite sex. And that's like it can be tied to so many things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And often in relationships, it gets triggered by the other person being the mirror, but it actually has nothing to do with the other person as an individual. And that is like such a profound thing to understand in relation that you don't like someone gets triggered and the other person becomes the victim and then you're both just being a victim. And it's like it actually has nothing to do with either of you as individuals to some degree.
Yeah.
Like it is your responsibility, but
Mm-hmm. I will say, if we didn't spend that 6 months with John Scott and doing couples therapy and learning how to communicate with each other, like, I don't know if we would still be as strong as we are today.
oh, for sure.
I do think that like there were some really big hurdles that we overcame there, and just learning how to communicate with each other, learning how to share our stories with each other, because so often we're in our own heads and we have our own stories running when we're communicating with others. And so to just lay it out on the table, it was like we had such a deep understanding of each other and our life experience before we even started triggering each other, right? Before shit hit the fan. We had the tools to be able to work through whatever came up.
For sure. And plenty did come up, you know?
That's true.
Like we're both kind of not very easily put in boxes and rather radical. So the random events that we run into are strange ones, you know?
Hmm.
Okay, so back to ayahuasca. Okay.
Hmm.
So
So,
tell me.
yeah, I mean, John Scott, I feel like Chuckleberry and John Scott led perfectly into ayahuasca and just opened up a whole new layer and interconnectedness, and having that experience of living for a year, dedicated to the medicine, in service to the medicine, and in service to our own exploration and awakening, was just the greatest gift that we could have been given. And I feel like ayahuasca, although she teaches us in the spirit realm, she teaches us how to be human, right? She really teaches us how to be here and be present and hold all of this experience, this human experience. Mm.
Hmm. Absolutely. And like one of the things our teacher says to us is she knows us better than we know ourselves.
Mhm.
And it's
Oh.
such a funny thing to interact with a conscious entity that is like that.
Uh-huh.
Like there is no hiding the shadows. She'll just grab that thing and pull it right to the surface.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
at first, there's so much resistance, you know? It's like, oh, this is hard, this is heavy. And then, like, slowly but surely, you begin to realize, like, that's the gift. Like, the
Mhm.
opportunity to release these things is the medicine, you
Mhm.
know?
To be present with them, to sit with them.
Mhm. And then,
Mhm.
like, it can be so difficult in ceremony, but it also teaches you, like, how to be better at life when life is
Mhm.
challenging,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
I have a friend. He's an amazing artist. He's in the Bitcoin space, and he came and drank medicine with us. And he had a pretty rough ceremony. And I remember I reconnected with him a few months later, and I was like, "How is like all the integration going?" And he's like, "Honestly, man, things are fantastic right now. Like all the depression and anxiety and everything I felt is gone. I feel super good." And I think part of it is just like ayahuasca was so hard that everything else in life is easy.
Oh, oh, yeah. Yeah, she takes you to the deepest, darkest, hardest places and then brings you back up and shows you how well you're able to navigate it or how well you're not able to navigate it, but gives you also tools to be able to navigate it. And I feel like we go to her to learn, right? To learn how to navigate this world and how to navigate our emotions and how to navigate everything we've been handed and yeah, turn it into art.
Walk a life in beauty.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Okay, so you're drinking ayahuasca, big consciousness expansion is now taking place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like everything is led up to this, and the Pandora's box of spirit has been opened. Um, there's two things that I want to get into, and I know one precurses the other, but I want to jump into the second one first, just
Okay.
while we're here, of how the process of dieta is different than ayahuasca and how the process of dieta has shaped you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you sit with ayahuasca, you're interacting with her. And she's a beautiful, divine, really strong, powerful spirit that has her own consciousness and has her own agenda and has her own work that she's doing for the collective, for the ceremony space, and on you. Incredibly powerful. But the lineage that we work with, the Shipibo, how they learn the worlds of ayahuasca and of herbalism and of shamanism and is vegetalismo, which is where they work with individual plants, with master plants. And they dedicate themselves for a certain period of time to these plants to learn from them, to take on their gifts, to take on their energy, to take on their essence, and to be able to use the plant's medicine for their own healing. At least in our case, when we have done diets, it's all been healing dietas. And so it's for our own healing. And so the process of dieta is dedicating yourself to a plant for a certain period of time. You have a contract with the plant that you make, spiritual contract, and you dedicate your time and your energy to this plant. And through the process, the plant gifts you their medicine.
So, just if people aren't aware, and I haven't touched on this yet. What what is a dieta? What is this? Is it a diet like cutting out fat? What is it?
I mean, you're cutting out some form of fat. Um, you basically want to create a vessel for the plant to be able to grow in you, right? For the spirit of the plant to be put in you. So when you sit with ayahuasca and you sit with a shaman, they'll basically like plant a seed inside of you, into your consciousness. and introduce you to this spirit, right? And it's your job to tend to this plant. And so it's really interesting because I have a permaculture and agriculture background. I actually understand what plants need on a very physical level and biological level. And so when we work with plants on the spiritual level, we actually create our bodies and our minds like a fertile compost, right? So we cut out a whole bunch of foods and a whole bunch of energies that the plants wouldn't like. But my understanding of composting is very similar to how you would make a really fertile soil, right? So you cut out salts. And there's a few different reasons why you cut out salt, but one is because it would change the pH of the soil. So if you think of your body as the soil for the plant to grow in, you cut out salts completely from your diet. You cut out any citrus. Same with when you're making compost, citrus can throw off the pH. You cut out any spices, any very intense flavors. Spices can burn plants. Right? So you restrict your diet to very, very, very basic. You're not eating any fats, a little bit of coconut oil or olive oil, but no red meat, no pork, no cheese, no dairy, no salt, no spices, no citrus. Extremely plain diet. No drugs, no alcohol, no sex, no mindless consumption of entertainment or media, no consumption of violence, no sexual thoughts, no sexual dreams. You basically strip yourself to the bone of all the things that are stimulating, and if you look around at the world and inside of yourself, I mean, every single human being struggles with their relationship between drugs and alcohol, food and sex. Let's just be real. Everyone's got a complicated relationship with at least one of these. Maybe we've worked through it, but we've all at some point. And I feel like when we're working with the plants, it's an opportunity to reevaluate all of those relationships. And this practice intentionally brings all of that up to the surface to see where you're still not yet free, right? To see where things still have you. Yeah.
Mhm. And like you realize very quickly too, because the thing with this contract is like no es broma. This is not a joke, you know? Like you can't open these diets and then just choose to cheat one day. That's not
Mm-hmm.
how it works. It's like depending on the size of the spirit that you're working with, it's life or death. You cross the plant, you can die, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the same in waking life. This is the same in dreams. No sex in dreams, no eating red meat in dreams, you know? And it's crazy. Like when you're on the outside looking in and someone's explaining this, it's like this is insanity, you know? But like once you're in it, it all begins to really start making sense. And when you remove all these things that like are stimulating and like create dopamine, you know, and like peak experiences, there's nothing left to desensitize yourself with. So
Mm-hmm.
like emotions start coming up, and then instead of being like, oh, and I'll eat some ice cream, oh, I'll watch a movie, oh, whatever, I'll have some sex, you know, it's like it's all gone. And it's like all you can do is sit with who and what you are in this moment.
Mm-hmm. No pacifiers.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. And that's where the real work happens. Right. And each plant also has its own agenda and its own work that it's doing and its own gifts that it has. And so it'll bring different things out in you. And you let the plant choose you because it wants to work on you.
Hmm.
Mm.
Drastically different, you
Yeah.
know, like some plants, like one of my plants was like all clearing out my guts. Physical, physical, you know? One day I wake up 50 pimples coming out of my stomach. Like it makes no sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Another plant, all mental, you know? It's all the neuroses in the mind, you know? Show you the way back to like alignment. So, okay, just as a last little touch point on this, how, if there's anything in particular that you can think of that wants to come through, how has the process of dieta changed you as an individual? And just for fun bonus points, how long was your longest dieta?
Just for fun bonus points. Yeah, I've dieted 3 plants now. And so the first diet I did was 3 months. The second diet I did was 6 months. And the third diet I did was a year long.
Oh,
So I have a pretty, I have a pretty good team behind me. I have a pretty good team that works with me. And yeah, just the potency also of each of those time frames too is really, really important for allowing the plants to work on you and allowing that relationship to grow inside of you. Yeah, definitely more diets in my future, but right now I feel like it's about learning how to be in my body. And I'm really enjoying that process. And I feel like I have such a strong desire to get better at dieting and to continue dieting. But at the same time, the plants also want me to learn how to be human, you know? And yeah, I feel like the process of dieting, the thing that's come through with all three of my diets so clearly is for me, it's really easy to devote myself and to protect my energy when I'm working with the plants. I have so much to give, and I will make so many sacrifices for their sake and for their energy and protect their energy constantly and clean my energy constantly for their sake. And the thing that just kept coming back again and again with all three of my diets, they were just telling me, and now it's time for you to do this for you. Your energy is just as sacred. Your energy is just as pure. Your energy is just as much protecting.
the
And
whole.
I feel like all of my plants really want to teach me how to love myself and be devoted to myself in that way. And they just show me that I'm capable of doing it, and then they point the finger back at me. Now do it for yourself.
Fantastic teachers they are.
The best.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Um,
Mhm.
okay, so now these two things are kind of entwined. Um, and I think it's funny, and it's like a perfect segment into where I want to go.
Mhm.
So, what has the wonderful world of ayahuasca and indigenous ceremonies taught you about moontime?
Mhm. Do you mind if I story time it?
Yeah, story time. Go.
Story time?
Always.
Uh, I mean, this all kind of came to a head right as we started drinking ayahuasca, right? As because I'd never really heard of how sacred, I'd never really connected with how sacred the human body was in general, my female body. I always had a little bit of resistance to connecting with the sacredness held in my body, the wisdom held in my body. And I feel like all of these indigenous teachers, it's always come back to the body, come back to the wisdom of the natural worlds. And when we were first drinking ayahuasca, we had decided that we were going to move on to this retreat center. We were going to spend a year there living and drinking and just furthering our own explorations and consciousness and cultivating, deeper into ourselves. And month after month, I wasn't able to participate in the ayahuasca ceremonies because my body was bleeding. And at first, I didn't even realize that this was a ceremony of itself. And my reaction at first was, this is so unfair. Why am I being left out because I'm a woman? And you see the same in Sweat Lodge. You see the same with all the First Nations. And the Lakota lineage that we sit with, you're not allowed to participate in ceremony. Depends on the curandero or shaman. But for most of them, you can't sit. A woman that is bleeding cannot sit. And I was taught in my life that women just, suck it up and get on with their days, and you don't really let it affect you. But to be within this culture that holds this time as sacred and so sacred and so powerful that it changes everything was so eye-opening. And month after month after month, I would be in the Moon Lodge. And at the time, I didn't even know what the Moon Lodge was. And it really, I'm so grateful for this experience because it just hardwired into me how important this time is, how important this ceremony is with our body. And that I felt like at first I was being left out because I was a woman and I felt like I wasn't going to evolve in the ways that you were or in the ways that I had expected of myself because I wasn't engaging in this, plant medicine ceremony because I had to be isolated and I had to be by myself. But the greatest teaching of all was that I evolved so much further in those months just by being with my body and being with myself and being with the ceremony of life and the wisdom of the female body and the feminine form. And
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that like I've just begun to understand more and more from like walking this path is just how much we have to bring like intention into everything and our prayer
mm-hmm,
into everything. And one of the ways of doing that to some degree is like you don't mix ceremonies,
mm-hmm,
you know? And the fact that, this cycle that you go through on a monthly basis is ceremony, start
mm-hmm,
to finish, And even like our teacher, he says, like, we're here to drink ayahuasca and do ceremony, but never forget, like, life is the most divine ceremony
mm-hmm.
of them all, you
And
know?
there's medicine in not drinking medicine, right?
The
Sometimes that
whole,
is the medicine, right?
yeah, only dieteros are allowed to say that. Newbie's not
mm-hmm.
allowed
Yeah.
to go show up.
Yeah. And also, it's not medicine for everybody either. Like she will call to the people that are ready for her. It's an initiation. And I think that for me, I had to spend those 4 months in the Moon Lodge not drinking medicine because I needed to learn that my body is its own ceremony, that my body is going through this monthly cycle that is so sacred and is so needed and is so like needed. It was so needed for me to embody that wisdom.
Mhm.
And ayahuasca knew that. And so she arranged all of the ceremonies to be at the time when I was bleeding. It wasn't even that every month it was at the same time. It was like every month ceremony would roll around and it would perfectly align up with my cycle. And she was doing it.
Just so people understand what Emily is saying here. Like, Emily is saying that she believes that there was a divine orchestration of the spirit of ayahuasca on her body to shift her moon time so that she couldn't sit, And like, I totally believe this too. But like, I can understand that this would be like quite esoteric for some people.
Right. I forget that that's even, far out because it's just the world that I live in. Like she's constantly every time ceremony comes around, my body and ayahuasca are doing a little dance. Because there's still healing and work to be done there for me. And so I really feel like she put me through the fire in that so that I could alchemize it, right? So that I could really hold that wisdom and share that wisdom with the world. And I wouldn't have received that.
And then I think that leads perfectly into sort of like the next direction I wanted to go in, which is like I have seen you embody this wisdom that I didn't even know existed until basically meeting you. And now, even as a man, right, it's changed the way I'm in relation to you, is also understanding this cycle. So, what is the mission that you're on with the Temple of Her and She is Nourished?
Hmm. Yeah, and I wanna shout out to you for the fact that you probably know more about a woman's cycle than 80% of the female population out
I would actually
there.
say 90.
I was also gonna say 90 actually, but and it's not necessarily your responsibility to go out and do that research for yourself, but it's my job to teach you, right? Like it's my job to embody that wisdom so deeply that it filters into everything that I do.
100%. And the simple example of that is like, and like we'll get into it more later, but like any like woman can go to her partner like, oh, you need to do this for me at this stage of my cycle, right?
Mhm,
But unless they deeply embody what they're expressing to the other partner, like no one's going to take it seriously.
mhm.
You know what I mean? Like when you're on your moon time, I cook for the house. And if you weren't in the Moon Lodge red tent vibes and you were just like out there conquering shit, I'd be like, fuck this.
I'm not doing shit.
No. Like if you don't
Mhm,
respect yourself and your cycle and your ceremony, then I'm like, why do I have to? You know?
mhm. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So the mission. The mission.
The mission. The mission. And I mean, you said that you didn't even know about this wisdom until you met me, but I didn't even know about this wisdom until ayahuasca showed me, right?
Oh.
So like this was totally new to me
Mhm.
up until 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? And
This ain't in the textbook.
it just feels like every turn I make, it's like the wisdom just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And the universe is constantly testing me with like how deep can it go? And I'm not deciding where it ends. But the mission now is just to share it with as many women as possible, especially with the young women, because this is wisdom that I found when I was 23 years old. But how much different my perspectives on life and my perspectives on my body and my perspectives on my femininity would have been if I had found it sooner. And no regrets, it's all divinely orchestrated and my soul chose to find it out when I did and it was perfect. But if I can, help that younger version of me, or help young women in the same place to reconnect with that wisdom of their body, to find that just rhythm with life, right? And attune to just the rhythms of nature, right? Instead of working against nature, it always feels like we're up against something. Whereas when you find that Godspeed, when you find that rhythm, when you find that attunement with your body and your femininity, like you become unstoppable. Not in the way that like unstoppable of like you can do anything that men can do and you can be a mother and you can, work the corporate job and you can be the wife and the home, but you can become unstoppable within like the capacity that you're able to open to your femininity, right? Like we are brought into these bodies, these female bodies, to be able to host that feminine expression. And I feel like so much of our world and our culture is suppressing that. And the deeper and deeper we come into this, the more we begin attuning and coming into harmony with that mother, with that feminine energy, with that cyclical nature.
Yeah. Can you just give a quick overview of the nature of a woman's cycle? Just
Quick?
even if
How quick?
could
How quick?
keep it under 90 minutes.
Okay. I mean, the best way to really relate with a woman's cycle and her body is really to attune to the seasons. It's something that we can all even if you didn't grow up in the northern hemisphere and you didn't have the four seasons super pronounced, you know what the feeling of winter, summer, fall, and spring is like. You know that energy. And so, as a woman moves through her cycle every single month, she has these energetics moving through her, right? She is moving in a 28-day hormonal cycle that is ebbing and flowing constantly. And so, as your hormones rise and as they drop, they're going to affect everything about you, how you show up, how you present yourself to the world, your relationship with yourself, your libido, your confidence, your creativity, and it's just the list goes on and on and on. Some women feel like hormones are happening to them, but they actually are making who you are, right? Like every single week when our hormones are shifting, we're showing up as different people. There are four different versions of me that you interact with on a monthly basis, and you know them very well. Do you want me to go through each phase of the cycle?
Yeah. Yeah. Just give me a quick what are the phases and what they kind of correspond to from your seasonal perspective.
Perspective. So I like to start with the follicular phase because it feels like spring. It's not actually technically the start of a new cycle, but in the same way that the new year doesn't really feel like the new year, I like to start with the follicular phase. So this is your hormones starting to build. This is your inner spring. So the energy is starting to build inside of you. You know, you can feel spring in the air. You feel creative and you feel full of potential, and your estrogen is slowly rising, your testosterone is slowly rising, your energy is starting to build back. And everything is kind of centered around ovulation. So you're building up to that peak. And then when you ovulate, that's your summer. That's kind of like we call it a menstrual cycle, but menstruating is just a byproduct. The real focal point is your ovulation. It should be called a fertility cycle because the goal is not to menstruate, it's to ovulate. So when you ovulate, that's your peak, that's your summer. And then everything after you ovulate, and that's usually around 2 days. And this is when your libido is the most high. It's when both your estrogen and your testosterone are at their peak. And it's when you have the most energy, when you are the most attractive. The actual structure of your face changes. Your face becomes more symmetrical when you have a lot of testosterone and estrogen pumping through your body. Uh, your scent becomes very attractive. Your appearance becomes more attractive, and you are more attracted to testosterone markers during this time. So that lasts for about 10 to 12 days. And then as you move into the next phase, your inner fall, estrogen starts to dip and progesterone takes over. And so estrogen is kind of like the I'm out on the prowl hormone, right? It makes you want to socialize. It makes you want to interact with the opposite sex. It makes you flirty. It makes you outgoing. And as that starts to go down, you start to draw into yourself, and progesterone starts to rise. And progesterone is more of the protective, creative. I want to stay inside. I want to connect with I want to like connect with myself and kind of hibernate energy. I like to call it the mama bear energy. It's like you're protective, you're slow, you move slower, you hibernate a little bit more. That starts to rise. And then that will rise for 10 to 14 days. So every woman's luteal phase is between 10 to 14 days, which a lot of women don't know. And as soon as your body stops producing progesterone, all of your hormones drop. And that's what causes you to shed your uterine lining. If you didn't fertilize the egg this month, the body has an automatic mechanism that will just shed the uterine lining and try again. And so that drops you into your inner winter. And I really love this luteal phase. It's like long and drawn out, and a lot of women really struggle with it, but it's like the descent into winter. It's like pulling back into yourself, going into your cocoon. I feel like the more gracefully that you fall into your inner winter, the easier it is. Um, in the same way of like how you feel with the seasons, if you prepare for winter, it will be easier.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
Nice. Yeah, that's a beautiful overview. And like before, like any lads listening to this, like this is not just a conversation for women, right? Like this is something that is actually affecting your life on a daily basis. Like if you're in relation or you're seeking to be like in a partnership with someone, like you can't escape these natural mechanisms to some degree. So like when
You can chemically castrate yourself to escape them.
yeah, but see then that leads to other problems and we'll get to that later, but like just like one of the side effects of birth control is it changes the way that women pick up pheromones and what they're attracted to. So like if you have like a partner who's like not going through this fertility cycle and instead they've completely chemically castrated themselves, then when they get off birth control you're in trouble. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like I know where you are to a probably 2 or 3 day like accuracy.
You can pinpoint it even like as good as one day. You're like better than any tracker. You're almost better than me, which is really interesting because I think that I am really in tune with how I show up every day, right? But like you're the one observing me too, right? So you actually know better than I know because it's changing everything that I do. And I have this idea of who I am, but you're seeing me evolve on a day to day basis. And your perspective is actually more powerful than my own understanding.
For sure, because we live in the present. You know what I mean? And like we are moving day by day, but I can see the rise, I can see the descent. And like I know this is kind of cheeky, but I'm just gonna say it, like, you are now my fiance, I like asked you to marry me. And my best buddy was like, when are you gonna do it? And I was like, when she's about to ovulate. You know what I mean? It's like if you're gonna ask something big of your lady, do it then. It's
Hmm.
like that's when everything is like flowing and the energy is good and the polarity is just like naturally there. So like to be ignorant to this as a man is actually doing a disservice not only to your partner but also to yourself.
And the
You know,
relationship as a whole, right?
for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
So okay, let's jump into what I just brought up then, and let's talk about birth control. So,
Mhm.
how does birth control change a woman?
So there's 17 different forms of birth control, first of all. So we're talking hormonal birth control, I imagine. And as I just went through the four phases of the cycle, you have this rise in estrogen, the rise in testosterone, the rise in progesterone, and then the drops. Right? Your cycle's moving in waves. And it's on a 28-day cycle. Whereas when you take hormonal birth control, you are just completely flatlined. There is no variation from one day to the next. When you're cycling naturally, you're getting a different hormonal message every single day, right? And your hormones are signaling for how you should show up, how you should respond, how you should behave, right? They're overseeing everything that you do. And when you're getting a different hormonal message from one day to the next, you're responding differently to your environment. Whereas when you're on hormonal birth control, what hormonal birth control is doing, particularly the pill, which is synthetic hormones, right? They're bio identical, but they're actually a lot of progesterone. Synthetic progesterone is actually made from testosterone, which is interesting. Um, but you're not getting the same hormones that your body would be producing naturally, but they're still being received similarly. And when you're on hormonal birth control, what the pill does to you is it puts you in a state similar to your luteal phase. So the body thinks that I've already released the egg this month, right? We don't need to build up the estrogen. We don't need to mature that egg. We don't need to release that egg because it's already been released. So it just maintains high progesterone, low estrogen all the way through, right? So you do not have these peaks and valleys. You don't have this variation. You're living in a constant inner fall, right? You're just perpetually in your luteal phase when you're on
Mhm,
hormonal birth control.
mhm. And before anyone jumps in and says, well, I like being extremely consistent,
Hmm.
right? To me, like being someone who has like guided a lot of people through the microdosing space, and like when we're talking about antidepressants, we're creating a similar thing with those pharmaceuticals, where it's like we're removing the ability for emotions to flow and to change over time, which
Hmm.
I would argue is like the heart pulses, right? It's like how you know you're alive. There's meant to be ups and downs. You're like, enjoy it, learn, enjoy, learn. That's how life becomes rich. And
Hmm.
like when we throw in antidepressants, you just flatlined. Everyone's just
Yeah.
fucking numb, And I would say it sounds like a very similar thing when it comes to birth control.
Yeah, they've actually Denmark did some really incredible and extensive studies on women because in Denmark they have basically these, what's it called when you have lists of things computerized? Like,
Like databases.
yeah, they have linked databases. So all their databases are connected
In their medical system.
in their medical system. So
Okay,
they're a
gotcha.
very
Yeah.
small, wealthy country. So all their databases and their medical records are all interconnected and they're linked. And so if you get a prescription for birth control, that is linked to, any other diagnosis that you get at any other time in your life. And so they started to do research in Denmark of what's the probability of women that get put on hormonal birth control, what's the probability of them being diagnosed with depression and anxiety. And depending on the age range, it changes, but for the age ranges 16 to 21, it was a 50% increase. Your likelihood of being diagnosed with depression and anxiety goes up 50%. And it's for the same reason that you said, when you stop having these peaks and valleys, when you're getting the same hormonal message every day, you begin to flatline, right? You don't have this signaling that makes life exciting and that makes life feel like it's worth living. It also deregulates your cortisol levels. So you're not getting these cortisol spikes. And a lot of people think that cortisol is really bad, but having really low cortisol or muted cortisol is just as bad because cortisol is also just signaling to you, oh, there's something important going on, right? An attractive man walks into the room and your cortisol spikes. Or a hot woman walks into the room and your cortisol spikes because it's signaling that there's something important happening here. Pay attention.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
when you're on hormonal birth control, you don't have that signaling of like, pay attention, this is important.
Okay. One thing that is hilarious that I mean, it's like also kind of sad, but it's also hilarious. Tell me about the stripper data.
Yeah, the stripper data. I can't remember the name of the researcher off the top of my head. I'm not really good with that kind of stuff. But it was a really good trial because in the trial, the strippers who were being studied didn't know that they were being studied. And what's it called? Someone that's getting stripped on? The
A participant? A
participant. What am I going
patron?
to? Patron. I think patron's the word. Patron's the word. The patron of the strip club also didn't know that they were being studied. It was a blind study. So no one knew that they were being looked at. And what this researcher did was that he got all the strippers to mark on a calendar when they came into work where they were at in their cycle. All right, when they clocked in for the day, they just had to mark where they were at. And then he would count up all the women's tips at the end of their shift, and he would cross-reference how much tips that they were making based on where they were at in their cycle. And what he found was that women that were in their follicular phase were making $30 to $50 an hour. I think it was $50 an hour. Women that were in their follicular phase, strippers that were in their follicular phase were making $50 an hour. Strippers that were ovulating were making $70 an hour. And strippers that were in their luteal phase were making $30 an hour. And that was just like the general consensus of all the strippers across the board. You would see this variation in how much they were making.
These are
What they
averages.
these yeah, the averages. But across the board that's what they were finding, and the women that were on hormonal birth control were making $30 to $40 an hour with no variation, which completely adds up with the luteal phase, right?
Mhm.
They were making the same amount of money as the women that were in their luteal phase because that's what you're perpetually in. That's what hormonal birth control is doing to your system, is putting you in that place. And they've even done studies where, men will smell the t-shirts of women at different phases of their cycle, and they will always be more attracted to the smell of women that are fertile. Right? The smell of women in their follicular and ovulatory phases will elicit testosterone in men, which makes them think that they're more attractive. Like testosterone and estrogen really like each other, right? They're very attracted to each other and they balance each other out really well. And when you're on hormonal birth control, you have very low estrogen because you're in that luteal phase where progesterone is dominant. And what they find is that women that are on hormonal birth control are attracted to men with low testosterone. But if they come off the pill, they realize they're not attracted to their partner anymore because they have no testosterone. And when they're cycling naturally and they have natural estrogen moving through their body, they want that testosterone, right? They want that masculine energy, that strong jaw, that symmetrical face. Those testosterone markers aren't being met. And there's some crazy studies out there about women that met their partners on hormonal birth control. They got married, they decided they want to have children, and then they went off hormonal birth control for the first time in 20 years and they realized they weren't attracted to their partner anymore and they got divorced. So divorce rates skyrocket when women go off hormonal birth control if they met their
Mhm.
partner on the pill.
Mhm. Mhm. That's interesting. And then and then we have a massive population of women on birth control, which is like this massive chemical experiment. Like this is not something that's new. I'm sorry, this is not something that's ancient by any
Yeah.
means. Like this is what, maybe 50 years of experimentation across the global
Mhm.
population. And there's this saying, and it's like good times make, what is it? Good times make weak men make hard times make
Make good.
strong men make good times,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's almost like we have women getting on birth control and then it's making weak men, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like castrating the nations.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also a piece of like, women are in the workforce, right? And we're all operating on this 24-hour circadian rhythm. And a man's cycle aligns perfectly with the circadian rhythm. Your testosterone peaks in the morning along with your cortisol, and then it dips throughout the day, and you get sleepy and you go to bed. And then you do the whole
Andresol.
cycle. You do the whole cycle all over again, right? And the whole workforce is built on this cycle. And so as women enter the workforce, they feel like they can't compete with men because they're not operating on the same cycle, right? We can't show up the same every day because we're changing from one day to the next. And so there's something enticing for women that are in the workforce to be on hormonal birth control because it makes you even keel, right? You do not have these fluctuations, right? It
Right. Even though you're actually probably performing at like the lowest point, it's even, but it's low.
it's even, but it's low, but there is some testosterone in there, so maybe it makes you a little bit more competitive in that sense. So you don't have all these fluctuations, you don't have all these, hormonal fluctuations that make you change from one day to the next, and you have a little bit more testosterone in your system, so you feel like you can compete with the boys a little bit more, you can show up.
Remember just like even seeing recently, just like scrolling on Instagram, this woman telling the story of like the time she took like the dose of a man's level of testosterone. And she was like, even I was looking around the office being like, I would bend her over.
And so she's so funny in the Temple of Her call the other day. I was like, Kate, ladies, there was like five ladies on the call. I was like, ladies, can we just have an appreciation for the fact that when we're ovulating, so when our testosterone as is at its highest, men have 30 times more than that at all times. And I was just like, guys, come on, can we just have a round of applause? And all the women are just like clapping for the men, being like, God, okay. Well, I have some, I feel for the men. When we're at peak ovulation, we're, incredibly vivacious and horny, and our libido is high, and we think about sex a lot. At least I do, and a lot of the women I was talking to do. And to think that men have 30 times more than that all the time is like, okay, we have some compassion for men. We just
Uh,
show some love. Show some love for the men and what they're dealing with on a day to day.
oh. Um, okay. I don't know if this is something that you know a whole lot about. Do you know the history of birth control?
Yeah, I know the history of birth control. I mean, there have been, herbalists that have been practicing forms of birth control. And I mean, birth control is very far reaching. I mean, abstinence is the best form of birth control. Uh,
Dieta.
yeah, no baby making on dieta. But I know that they're in some, ancient wives' tales. They're using fennel tea as birth control, um, or to bring on your bleed. Um, but in terms of just hormonal birth control, that came about in the 1960s. And there were two scientists named John Rock and Gregory Pincus who actually developed the hormones that are in hormonal birth control, but they couldn't get it to market. So it was the early 1960s, and these two scientists were starting to develop it, but there were no women that wanted to go on trial, basically. No one trusted it, no one believed it. It was also, very anti-Christian. But there was a few women that were really pushing it, and actually Margaret Sanger, who is the owner of Planned Parenthood, she's the one who started Planned Parenthood. She was the one who helped push it and fund it. And she was hanging around with all the elitists of the time. What's that really famous family? The Rockefellers? Is that the really
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
she was hanging around with that kind of crowd, the Rockefeller crowd. It was that kind of crew that, and she was she had her own agenda, but she had a lot of money and access to a lot of investment. And so she teamed up with these two scientists to bring it to the market. And what's interesting actually is birth control was the first drug ever put on the market that shut down a fully functioning system in a healthy human body. And like, this is like an important thing to just wrap our head around here, right? This is a fully functioning body, totally healthy, and we're just going to shut down that system. So that was the first drug on the market. And how it went to market was they had all this investor money, and they had had done all the research into it, but they didn't know if their, levels were right. And none of the American women wanted to go on trial. So what they did was they took the trials to Puerto Rico. And Margaret Sanger had her own agenda, and she's been called a eugenicist. And so she has some really strong opinions about ethnic cleansing and how birth control is going to save the undesirables, I think is what she says.
Hmm. Sounds like a
It's,
classy lady so far.
it's, it's,
Yeah.
she's definitely working with some dark magic, that woman.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so they bring this trial to Puerto Rico and they market it as we're bringing birth control to Puerto Rico, not that this is a trial of birth control that has not been FDA approved. And so they just think that they're getting free birth control. And I think there were about 1,500 women in the study, and 4 of them died because the hormone levels were just way off. They were all complaining about nausea and blood clotting, and they just had the symptoms go on and on and on and on and on. And none of these women knew that they were participating in a trial. And so they just completely, they went into this little shanty town in Puerto Rico and just did their dirty work. But they got enough evidence to go to trial. They changed the hormone balance so that it was stable and healthier, and they put it onto the market. Not killing anybody, okay?
Hmm. Slowly, just slowly.
I mean, it's still, the greatest, health experiment going on in our, lifetime.
Mhm.
No one actually knows what the long-term implications of this mass uncontrolled study of, chemical castration.
No, of course. Like it's actually insane, you know?
Except that you see in Denmark that the incidence of women committing suicide goes up if they're on hormonal birth control. So there's that fact out there.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So
So,
back to slowly. It's not killing them immediately anymore. It's just killing them slowly.
in workaround ways.
Yeah, great. That's perfect for their statistics. I imagine it's kind of the same with like antidepressants. It's just like, oh yeah, no one dies from withdrawals or overdose. It just happens that when they go into withdrawal and they get off, suicide rates like 10x. You know, it's got nothing to do with the medication, obviously.
It's just byproducts.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's a little Margaret Sanger history. You can dive into that deeper. It's a dark hole to go down. Uh, you can listen to some of her speeches, and you can totally feel the energy that she's just bringing to this.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And she's the founder of Planned
Plan.
Parenthood,
Mm.
which is great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a very powerful woman with her hands and other things in a lot of pockets,
Mhm.
pulling a lot of strings.
Mhm. Okay, let's make a nice transition out of evil scientists and elitists trying to chemically castrate the entire world to um, the transition of taking this idea of the period
Hmm.
to the sacred moon time
Hmm.
and the importance of language around these things. I'd love to hear your take.
I mean, I think it's just important to recognize that language shapes our world, right? I really didn't realize this to quite the extent as when I started learning Spanish. I started thinking in Spanish and I started dreaming in Spanish, and I just noticed that like how I interacted with the world started to shift. Right? And that's why it's so important that, indigenous cultures protect their language because that is their worldview. That is, how they make sense of the world and what they're seeing. And I think it's really important for women if they're gonna come into relationship with their body, if they're gonna learn how to honor their body, to actually change the language that they use around their body. right? When we talk about a period, and I don't even use this word anymore, like just doesn't come out of my mouth. It's either my moontime or my bleed, right? It's either call it what it is or bring, this sacred feminine lunar inspiration and, this inseparable connection that we have to the moon and to our feminine energy, and that we're operating on the same cycle as the moon, just like you're operating on the same cycle as the sun. You have you have your deity and we have ours. you know? So, I mean, period literally just means to end a point in time, right? In the same significance as you end a sentence with a period, you end a cycle with a period. Um, but again, it's like we're not cycling to bleed. We're cycling to ovulate. We're cycling to be fertile because we are fertile beings, because we're feminine, we're feminine, generous, giving, motherly beings.
Mhm.
And I feel like when we use this language of period, we disconnect ourselves from that understanding. We forget. And when things are interwoven into your everyday language, it's hard to forget, right? It's hard to forget that sacred ceremony that you have with yourself that's going on in the background at all times when you're constantly referencing it as such.
Mhm. Yeah, it's not a period. It's actually the whole thing.
Yeah,
It's the whole thing. It's every minute of every day.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
And I even notice, like, even some women in my community, they'll refer to their cycle. And when they refer to their cycle, they're talking about their bleed. And I have to, like, hey, remind them, hey, your cycle isn't your bleed. Your bleed is your bleed. That's your moon time. But your cycle is the whole thing. You're always cycling. Right? You're not just cycling when you're bleeding. It's not just this little, you can't package it up into this 5 days. It's never ending. It's just you're on the roller coaster at all times. And I feel like so many women that aren't in tune with it, it does feel like a roller coaster, right? Or it does feel like you're getting taken out at certain times of your cycle. But if you learn how to ride it, you can actually learn how to like harness the power of your cycle and use it to your advantage, not to your demise, right? It's not something that we've been inflicted with. It is our greatest gift and our superpower. And that reframe is so important.
It's like literally the immediate connection to like the life death cycle, you
Yeah.
know? Like I'm not tapped into that. I have to like kill an animal, you know, to
Hmm.
even get close to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's happening all the time in our body. And I feel like, again, in the same way that ayahuasca taught, our shaman says, come taste a little death, and the ceremony sometimes can feel like a part of you is dying. My cycle in the same way. It's like every month a part of me is dying, like energetically, emotionally, and physically. Right. And just, I feel like I come closer to death and I come into relationship with death with each cycle that I have. And I learn how to let a little part of me die.
Hmm. On the good ones, when the resistance isn't there, you know? Always, right?
Don't call me out, all right?
Yeah. Okay. Just while we're talking about eggs moving around in different places, one thing that I've really loved exploring with you that I've never really heard anywhere else is, and I don't want to dive too far into the mineral health stuff, because we can always have another conversation about that later. But you were explaining to me how the food that we're very likely to like metabolize the best
Hmm.
is actually the food of our grandmothers.
Hmm.
So I was wondering if you could kind of just expand on that
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I can. So when our mother is inside of our grandmother's belly, right? So as women, we are born with all the eggs that we will ever have, right? Like we are born with 5 to 6 trillion eggs. And those eggs are created inside of our grandmother. Wait, I got lost. When our grandmother is pregnant with our
Her
mother,
eggs are given
her
to
eggs,
her. Yes.
exactly. I got lost there. So the egg that we become is formed inside of our grandmother's belly when she is pregnant with our mother.
Yeah. So this is the maternal grandmother.
Yeah, so this is maternal grandmother. And another thing is that your mitochondrial health, so the DNA inside of your mitochondria, comes directly from the maternal line. So you cannot inherit any mitochondrial DNA from your father's side. It does not come paternally. It comes directly from your mother and your mother's mother and her mother and her mother's mother's mother. That is an unbroken chain of the maternal line. And when your grandmother is pregnant with your mother, she is creating the egg that then becomes you, because we have the most eggs that we will ever have at 20 weeks gestation. Like my mom had all of the eggs that she would ever have when she was in my grandmother's belly. And what's being influenced is when your grandmother is eating and when she's producing those eggs and when she's producing that fetus, everything that she's eating is directly supplying the creation of that life, of the life that then became you. Right? So whatever she is eating at that time is what your mitochondria would be the most adapted to metabolize. So I always ask my clients, like, if they're struggling with digestion or they don't feel like they're eating the right foods for themselves, I ask them, like, what was your grandmother eating when she was pregnant with your mother? Because those are the foods that your DNA, the mitochondrial DNA, the energy packs of your cells, has adapted to metabolize. Right? It's what it's what it's built from. And so you would be able to metabolize it even more so. It is a little bit different now because the nutrients in food has gone down so significantly. So like if your grandmother was eating apples, and she was getting all her nutrients from apples, you would have to eat 5 times more apples to get the same amount of nutrients today than she would have been eating.
From soil
Right?
degradation.
Yeah, just from our farming practices and from the way that we're depleting the life in the soil, we don't have access to as many nutrients as the generations before us.
Mhm. It just like that just brings up like a really kind of like interesting idea for me where we look at so many people having issues with like food tolerances, and not just like allergies but also just like people not having great guts and like their digestion being kind of messed up. And what you're really talking about is like eating basically just like your grandmother. And if you put us in like an indigenous setting, like we were doing that for
Hmm.
generation after generation after generation. Like the Shipibo people are eating yucca every day. They're
Uh-huh.
eating plantains every day, the whole way down the line. You
And the
know what I
same fish
mean?
that their grandmother was eating from the same river.
Uh-huh. And then now we are like, oh yeah, I'll have Italian for lunch and I'll have Indian for dinner. And then tomorrow I'll have, whatever for breakfast. And
Hmm.
then like the food that we're eating, while diverse and you would think would have more bioavailable, like more minerals or more nutrients of different
Hmm.
types in
Yeah,
it, to some
more
degree, like maybe
diverse.
the bioavailability is just like fucking zero, you know?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times we actually haven't adapted, our genes haven't adapted to digest those foods as well. right? Like you are always being shaped by your environment. And if you come from a certain region of the world that has this certain food, your DNA will be able to adapt to that because it's been eating that and it's been metabolizing that for generations.
I have a friend who I want to have on the podcast at some point in the future. His name's Steph, and he's a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. And he was saying, like, I want to get this right. I'm pretty sure this is what it was, is that the symbol for chi, like energy flow chi through the
Hmm.
body, is actually the same as like grain. So it's like if you're of like Asian descent, it means like eating rice. And he
Yeah,
was like, I'm of French descent. So like I eat like, gluten wheat,
wheat.
you know?
If you're Mexican, you eat corn.
I mean, right now, if you're anyone, you eat corn. We're like if you eat anything like the average like Western culture, you're 99% corn. Like reading the Omnivore's Dilemma was hilarious.
But indigenous Mexicans are well adapted to corn. Just as I imagine the Peruvians and the Bolivians got the potato game on lock.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For
They
sure.
know how to digest potatoes, those ones.
Hmm.
But I also just feel like our diets, I mean, in the Western worlds, our diets have changed so much in the last 2 years. Like many people don't even know what their grandmothers ate, and you wouldn't even necessarily be able to get what your grandmother ate. You're not even exposed to it anymore because it's just evolving so quickly, and we have so much choice now.
Hmm. Hmm. And also just like the whole food system is just like completely gone haywire. Where like you go, oh yeah, my grandmother ate bread, right? But like how you would make bread was like it was always sourdough,
Uh huh.
unless you're a Jew. It was
Hmm.
always sourdough, you know?
Yeah.
And like because it's sourdough, it's like has all the biome and it breaks the gluten down so it can be digested correctly. And now it's just like here's white cake bread,
Hmm.
and it's actually like not even the same food.
No. No, and even like, when fast food joints first started, they were cooking with tallow and butter because seed oils weren't even a thing yet.
For sure. I remember stories growing up of like my dad being like my nana's favorite food was like after they would make sausages, she'd take all like the lard drippings and put that on bread,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just how people ate,
Mhm.
right? That was just normal. And we've just come so far.
Okay, so pushing on this idea a little bit more, right? One thing I really love about, firstly, having you in my life and basically being in control of what I eat, um, but also just the way that you respect food,
Hmm.
like the idea of food as a medicine rather than
Hmm.
food is food. So,
Hmm.
wondering if you could elaborate on that for me.
Okay, I mean, that kind of ties in everything that I do really with my mineral work and the permaculture work and just there's this quote that's, food can be the quickest form of poison or the slowest form of medicine. The quickest form of medicine or the slowest form of poison?
Hmm.
I think that's
That's
how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's the way it would go. Yeah.
Hmm. And I really feel that. And I feel like indigenous knowledge has known that forever. And so much of our food cycle these days is just filled with things that are slowly killing us, and just coming back to that wisdom. And we've just lost our relationship with food. And I think what's so powerful about dieta is that we get to reassess our relationship with food through the process of cutting out all of these foods, all of the sugar, all of the salt, all of the spice, all of the stimulation, and just really come back to the wisdom of our bodies that, like, our bodies know what they need. right? We have this intuitive intelligence of what our cravings are. And I think so many of us are disconnected from our cravings and we don't trust our cravings, right? If we're craving an Oreo cookie, it's like that's not what your body actually wants. That's what your dopamine wants. That's what your mind wants. That's what your taste receptors want. But your body has this really deep knowing of what it needs. And I feel like we've become so disconnected from that wisdom, and we've learned how to not trust that wisdom. And so a lot of my work is teaching people how to come back to that wisdom.
Mhm. I mean,
Mm.
just in general, it's like most of your work is just like helping people unlearn.
That's what we're all fucking here to do. We got so many programs running, bad habits and bad programs. And yeah, really just come back to the wisdom of nature, come back to the wisdom of our bodies, unlearn all of this programming.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that I noticed like during Dieta, which is like nice that you brought that up. So I actually kind of didn't think of that as an angle, which it definitely should have been. Um,
that's why we're
but
a team,
like,
baby.
yeah, um, at first it's all the cravings going off, it's just like, oh, cookies, ice cream, yum. And then that slowly, once that you get over that hump, it takes like a good, at least for me, it took a good like 30, 60, even maybe 90 days to like really land post ice cream cravings,
I
you
would
know?
say me, it took 30. I would say 30 days. I was like rolling on the
Uh-huh.
food thing.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't like salivating, but like it was coming up still every now and then.
Mhm.
Um, But then once I got over that hump, then it was like, oh, now I finally, for the first time in my life, understand what it's like to eat intuitively. And it's like we would go to the market and it's like, oh, I want this fruit. Oh, I
Mhm.
feel like red things. And it's like, oh, no, I don't want broccoli. You know what I mean? I can't do any more broccoli
Mhm.
this week. And it's like, I knew what my body needed intimately.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
past the point of like, oh, my body needs vegetables, not ice cream. And it's like, no, we're talking about what specific vegetables in specific portions at specific
Yeah.
times of the day,
Yeah.
you know? Like
Mhm.
actually riding the wave of the intuition of what the body wants at like all times.
Mhm. And just the connecting with like your senses too, right? Like you're attracted to certain colors and certain fruits because your body knows what it can provide you with,
Mhm,
right? Red signifies that it's a blood purifier. So your body will be drawn to certain, red foods when you're about to bleed, for instance.
mhm,
And that's why
mhm,
you crave red foods right before your bleed, and like taste and smell and touch, and just becoming intimate with your food. Right? When you go to the market and you like touch your food and you feel your food and you interact with the person that grew your food, right? It's just like you turn on all of those senses, you signal to the body what's coming, and your body is able to like prepare to digest these foods as well. And, when you receive all this food out of a counter and eat it in your car, it's like you're just cutting off all of those signals.
mhm, mhm. And I
Like
can only imagine like what it must be like. I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that live like exclusively on Uber Eats groceries, like
100%.
delivery. They just like sit back at their computer. They don't look, smell, touch, feel anything. They have no discernment around this mango looks better than that mango. And
Yeah.
it's literally just like fiat megacorps just like sending the shit down the pipeline to you.
Hmm. And also being in tune with like what's growing in your area too.
Mhm,
Like a lot of food gets imported and it's like it wasn't grown on soil that you're adapted to. It wasn't grown in an environment that you're adapted to. Like you will metabolize food better that is grown in the area that you're in.
mhm,
Right? Like there is a point where like you would metabolize food better that was grown where your grandmother was in, right? But like, come down the line too, like you are attuned to your surroundings, the amount of light that is being received, the wind, the air, all of it, the minerals in the soil. If you're living in that environment, you want to be eating from that environment and you want to be eating seasonally.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, like even as an example. Like we eat a lot of like momos, like the rambutan lychees down here
Mm-hmm.
by the fistful, when they're in season. I was just recently in Boston and they had them in like the Whole Foods there, whatever it was. And I was like, I would never fucking eat these. You know what I mean? Like shipped
Yeah.
halfway across the world. Like the beauty of the Momo, is that like you got it yesterday, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and you can taste the freshness in it, but also the nutrient content is there, right? Like when you harvest things early, you plants have this mechanism where they'll actually create like, is it tannins
I mean,
or
there's lots of different things. Like there's like lectins and tannins and
lectins and
oxalates
tannins?
and all of it.
They'll basically like make their fruit poisonous until it's ready to be eaten, right? Like
Mhm,
until it's the seeds have fully formed and they could pass on. Like the fruit actually had, like the tree or the vine, the plant has a mechanism where as soon as the seeds are ripe and ready to be fertilized, it will pull out all of those toxins. So if you're harvesting food early, the plant still has all of those toxins, that fruit still has all of the toxins in it, and then you eat it and you absorb them all. And so you don't actually digest food as well when you're not letting food ripen on the vine.
mhm,
As well as if you take food off the vine and you let it sit in your fridge or, in a shipping container for a week, the nutrient content goes down every single day by a significant portion.
mhm. Or we take it to the total extreme of how McDonald's fries are created, and they use so many pesticides and herbicides in the fields and fertilizers that they need to pull out all the GMO potatoes and leave them in a warehouse to off gas for like
Off
60
gas.
days, where you have to wear a fucking hazmat suit, to
Ay,
even
ay,
go
ay.
in there. And then you're like, oh yeah, well they've been off gas and now deep fried in seed oil. Yum yum.
Ay, ay, ay.
Like
Off
fuck
gas.
me.
Disgusting.
Off gas.
Off.
You know?
Gotta off gas your food before you eat
Oh,
it.
of course.
Ay, ay, ay.
And like obviously it's not always that simple where like you can just click your fingers and like we all go back to eating like, indigenous and naturally and stuff. Like food systems are held up like in this fucking crazy scheme now, So
Mm-hmm.
it's not just like an immediate fix, but like as the individual, if you have like any level of like consciousness, it's like the food that you eat literally becomes you, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, it's a living organism that you take on into your body, right? And like you are constantly taking on the energy of the food that you're eating. So not even, like its nutritional value, but like how it was grown, who it was grown by, who cooked it, who prepared it for you. And when you're so disconnected from that chain of events, like your body doesn't know what to do with it.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. And like
Mm.
another perfect example, like even from my own experience, is like I'm super pro red meat, you know? Like obviously we cut it out on diet and everything, but like when I eat it, I feel good. Like I feel my
Mm-hmm.
body like really turning on. But like there's also energetic components to all these things. And like if you go carnivore for like any length of time, even like after a week, you start to feel like this like aggression, this like instinctual mind gets on overdrive, and there's like that layer, to the way like the
Mm-hmm.
way we eat too. And it's not to
Mm-hmm.
like overcomplicate things, but it's just to come back to like how important the intuitive thing is. Because
Yeah.
you can't write a list of yes, no, in this proportion and this amount of this many days of the week. It's literally like every meal, is in front
Mm-hmm.
of you and every week is in front of you. And it's like you have to dance with it.
And I think it's really dangerous to, start looking at food just as calories too. I know a lot of women count their calories, and it's like food is so much like, just dulling it down into a number of calories on a table. And it just takes out all the medicine from it. It just strips it down. into
I mean, even like the unit of calories. I may not recall this exactly, but it's something about like putting the material into a like a black box and set fire and see how much energy comes out of it. Like that's how our digestion works.
yeah. And that's why I work with the minerals, because it is something that's tangible, right? It is something that can be measured in the body. And it's like our direct relationship with the ground beneath our feet and with the food that we eat, but it can be measured. Minerals, they're never born and they never die, right? They just cycle from one life form to another. And it's
Mhm.
literally just, the ground that we walk on, the minerals, the grandfathers adapting to our body. And when we die, it's just going to go back into the cycle.
Yeah,
Mm.
that reminds me of that. You know the song that's like all over Instagram of the indigenous people in Papua New Guinea, and it's just like so beautiful, like the lyrics. I'll just pull it up. Um,
Are you going to play it, or are you just going to read the lyrics?
I mean, I could actually just play it, I imagine.
Yeah.
If I can find it is the question. It's so good though, but the lyrics I'll just read the it is my
Isn't it
alarm.
your alarm? Then it
Yeah,
must
but
be on your phone
I got to find
somewhere.
the lyrics here somewhere. Uh, I'm pretty sure I saved it recently. Yeah, there it is. So the lyrics: day by day we walk on, our feet pressing the same earth. Our fathers and our fathers' fathers walked day by day while they walked on. Day by day we walk on. Hush, little ones, don't tell the earth we love her yet. We will sleep in her soon enough, but for now we walk on. Like,
Oh,
oh, the spirit right there,
yeah.
you know? Mm.
Yeah. That's the medicine.
Yeah, yeah. And just like, man, I've so very much enjoyed my relationship with you, over the last like
No,
7
really?
years. And such a big piece of that is just this like pursuit of something sacred, like it does feel like it's at the top, you know? It's even like the lives that we live and our relationship as a whole. It's like it's for creator, you know?
Hmm.
And it's like for these plant spirits and it's for the Pachamama, and like our teacher, he says, like, we're all just searching for something sacred, like
Hmm.
all of us. We walk through life. And like it took me a long time to actually find what that was, you know? But now I see it everywhere,
Yeah, it's
but
in
at
everything.
first, like I was a hard nut to crack, like ayahuasca had to do some
Physicist.
yeah, like I was as fucking rational, logical, materialist as you get, But like now the food is sacred. Now the water is sacred. Now our home is sacred. The energy in our space is sacred. Our relationship is sacred. Our sex is sacred, Or at least we try to get as close as we can, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're not perfect, but
Yeah. I'm probably gonna go eat a little bit of chocolate after this. So like,
can be sacred. Cacao is sacred medicine.
this is true. This is true. Yeah. Anything else you wanna add? I'm kind of feeling like
I'm feeling pretty complete. I feel like we
yeah.
definitely have to have more conversations, but for this one, I mean, it's been 2 hours. I feel like we've touched a lot of bases. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think like we definitely have like a whole other conversation to some degree around minerals.
mhm.
Um, but we'll probably do that one kind of nitty gritty and you can like have your notes up and like really dive in and like almost like a lecture style,
Uh-huh.
you know?
That sounds fun.
Uh, But I feel like this was like a really good just like overview of like who
Opener.
you are and our relationship and some of the medicine that you offer the world and you
Mhm.
know
For sure.
I really like when it comes to telling stories, and I even said this to Emily like before we jumped on, was like one of the biggest points for me of like creating this podcast is really just like all of us have gone through a journey and like learned a lot of lessons along the way. And something I've learned through my own process is like this idea of like the hero's journey, that we all have to go on. But then there's kind of like another parallel system to that, which is like apprenticeship,
Mhm.
and you don't have to like go through all the faults of by yourself. You can actually
Mhm.
learn from other people's. Like we're not like, oh, we saw like we're not monkeys at the point where it's like monkey burn themselves and like I see someone burn themselves, but I'm like, I need to burn myself
Verify.
just to make sure. Yeah. Like there's things we have to verify, of course. And like we'll always have our own like karmic events like just like smash into our lives at points.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's just, life is good. Life is good.
Mhm. Oh,
And
we
I
always.
just we it's so hard to find the signal and find the noise and go through growth sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And I know if I could talk directly to like 18-year-old Matt, I would be a fucking lifesaver. And I know for a fact that if you could talk to 16-year-old Emily or a bunch of 16-year-olds out there, it would like seriously change the trajectory of lives in the most positive of ways, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why I like want to come on here and have these conversations and hold space for you to like share your medicine and your message with the world.
Mhm.
So thanks for coming on and sharing your medicine.
Thanks for providing the container for me to do so in all the ways that you do in my life. This is just one of many, but it's such a joy sharing with you and weaving with you and kind of just also retracing our life together, and like all the beauty and all the ways that we've just created so much sacredness in our life and so much meaning and purpose. And we're still here 6.5 years later, just getting
No, it's
started.
just a start. Yeah.
Just getting
Like,
just getting started.
yeah. I it was like, I met Emily 3 days into my trip. And 4 days later, I told my best friend I'm going to marry her. It was
And
just
here
like, done.
and
You're the one.
almost exactly 7 years later, it's happening.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's
It's
gonna be
like
seven.
almost
It's
exactly.
almost exactly. It's gonna be 7 years.
Uh huh. Nice. I
Oh,
like the number seven.
yeah, me too. That feels right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's wrap it up. Last thing. Uh, what is the meaning of life
Mm.
in one sentence?
To be.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
It's just fun.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you
It's
so much for anyone who tunes in to listen to this one. Emily's absolutely amazing. She's getting some Instagram communities, school communities going, teaching her medicine. Where can they find you?
So you can find me at Instagram, on Instagram at Her the Sacred. And in there, in my link in my bio, I have access to my free women's community where we meet every Wednesday and just explore a different topic every week on just women's health and femininity and just connection and creating a space for women to see and be seen and explore and learn just the sacredness held in our body and just keep coming back to that week after week, hold that torch. So if you want to connect with me on there, I'm always looking for new women to bring in. And yeah, I would love to see you. Thank you, Matt, for all the space that you create and provide and magic and light that you bring into this world.
Wow, you're more than welcome.
Mm-hmm.
De nada. Okay. I'll put all the links to everything down below as well, so you can find Emily real easy. And yeah, that's it. Let's go have dinner. All my relations.
Homie,